Hello there, this is Gabriel Bismut and today I'm gonna play for you the whole violin part of Stuff Smith on After You're Gone, so buckle on. First of all, I wanted to tell you how glad I am to be back making new videos. In my previous jazz violin transcription video, I had promised you guys that I would make a new video soon, but it actually took me some months to make a new video, and that's because I had moved in a new apartment, so it took me some time to be ready to make a new one. But here I am, so I hope that you guys will enjoy this new video and I'm looking forward to make other ones. Show your support, just like, comment the video, and for those of you who haven't already subscribed on my channel, well, you just have to click on the subscribe button and on the bell. You've just listened to my interpretation of one of the most important solos in jazz violin history, After You've Gone, as played by Stuff Smith in 1936. In this solo, Stuff Smith tells us just one simple thing: you really can play jazz on the violin. We'll see why in a minute, but first let me remind you that as usual, you can find a link to download the transcription of this solo as well as the backing track in the description of this video. I also suggest you watch my other video about the solo of Stuff Smith on Undecided, where I talk about other aspects of his playing like his phrasing, his vibrato and his left hand pizzicato. Let's talk about the structure of the tune. The first violin solo is actually a counterpoint to the theme played at the trumpet. Then there's a theme sung by Stuff Smith. Wait, did you really expect me to sing it? Sorry guys, let me focus on the violin part. Then there's the proper violin solo, followed by a trumpet solo with violin comping. And with this chorus, the tune ends quite abruptly, which is typical of all jazz tunes, as I mentioned in my video about Sweet Georgia Brown. So earlier I was telling you that this is probably one of the most seminal solos in jazz violin history. Let me explain myself. In this solo, Stuff Smith doesn't just play a melodic line over harmonies like in classical music, but instead he uses arpeggios to emphasize almost every important note in each chord. The description of the use of arpeggios by Smith would require a full lecture, which I'm not gonna give here, but let me state those simple facts. On major chords, Smith uses major sixth arpeggios or even major seventh arpeggios. On minor chords, he uses minor major sixth arpeggios, minor major seventh arpeggios, or even minor 11th arpeggios. On dominant 7th chords, he uses dominant 9, and dominant flat 9 using diminished arpeggios. On diminished chords, he obviously uses diminished arpeggios. As you can see, although he wasn't using any dominant 13th arpeggios, which were made more popular in the bebop era, Smith was already using a very complete harmonic approach, much more complex than the one used by Grappelli in the same period, which is described in my videos about minor swing or Sweet Georgia Brown. But Smith doesn't stop there and uses even more complex harmonic tools like chord substitutions and a diminished approach. Now I'm gonna play a full specific phrase in the solo that Smith plays over the trumpet theme, and I'll analyze it for you. So on the A-flat major chord, Smith starts with an A-flat major arpeggio, followed by the C-B-B-flat chromaticism, which is taken from the F-flat major blues scale. Then on the next bar, he still plays the A-flat major blues scale with a major 7th G. Then on the third bar, he plays this arpeggio, G, E, C, and B flat. But he actually meant to play a D flat instead of C, so that would give a descending B flat 7 diminished arpeggio. And then on the fourth bar, he plays a descending B7 diminished arpeggio and C7 diminished arpeggio, to finish on the D-flat major chord with a major third F. So he actually uses 3 diminished arpeggio to approach the last chord, D-flat major, in a chromatic movement. As you can see here, Smith uses a harmonic approach rather than a melodic one, which means that instead of staying on the A-flat major chord, he substitutes with other chords which are implied by the note he plays. This is something that only real jazz players do, and Smith was already doing this on the violin at that time. Another example of this approach can be found a bit later in the solo. In the chord of F minor, he uses a descending A-flat 7 diminished arpeggio, which is the same as D7 diminished, so he actually anticipates the D7 diminished chord that follows. And then, in order to approach the A-flat major chord, he plays a descending G7 diminished arpeggio, to finish on the A-flat major chord. So we still have a chord substitution in which a major chord is approached chromatically by diminished arpeggios. Another fact that makes this solo so important is that it's in the key of A-flat, which is a lossless violin friendly as compared to the keys in which, for instance, Grappelli was playing at that time, like A minor or G major. This tune really was recorded in A flat, and not in A as can be heard in certain recordings which have been mistakenly shifted a semitone up. So, to those who think that jazz violin can only be played in simple keys like A or G, well, this is one of the most important and seminal solos in jazz violin history, and it's in A flat, so. This tune also contains a lot of Stuff Smith trademark violin gimmicks. There's this first one in the intro. Then there's this other one which introduces the violin solo. And then this one. Then there's this one which is kind of bluesy. Then comes this one which I really love. And then there's this last one. Those gimmicks are mostly chromaticisms. At a time where almost nobody was playing out of the harmony, Stuff Smith was already using dissonances in a not so sophisticated but very effective way. This has influenced some famous modern jazz violinists like Jean-Luc Ponty or Didier Lockwood, and who knows, it might also have influenced some famous rock guitarists. One last fact worth noting is that Stuff Smith plays all those complicated jazz licks really fast, at an amazing 266 BPM. So it's no surprise that there happened to be some mistakes in the solos. It shows that these guys didn't cheat, that they didn't write their own solos prior to the recording, that the recording weren't edited, and most and foremost that though being all excellent musicians, they weren't obsessed with technical perfection. To my mind, all these small imperfections give these old recordings all their charm. I had fun picking up all the small mistakes, like playing major thirds over minor chords. Mistakes are more obvious in the slow version, which I'm gonna play now, and they are marked as blue in the transcription. As a conclusion, I'd say that this is a very complete solo which showcases a lot of different aspects of jazz violin playing. It contains at the same time very straightforward violinistic gimmicks that remind more of a blues or even rock violinist, and sophisticated harmonic tools that show that Smith already had an advanced knowledge of jazz improvisation, altogether with his so compelling and swinging style of playing that make him one of the greatest jazz violinists of all time. So if you want to mature as an improviser on the violin, I really suggest you dig into Smith. That's it. So once again, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to my channel. See you! The first violin solo is actually a counterpoint, 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 a counterpoint,